What do you make of... I've just brought it up on the screen here. This it's almost like Bristol's Private Eye. Some people think it's a really scurrilous magazine, but they're extremely rude about all sorts of people of all political stripes. The Bristolian. Do you have you got a subscription to it? Do you take it regularly? Because we have all sorts of scam. In fact, in the latest edition, we've got Joe has been mentioned. Do you want to just say a little bit about that, Joe? That article. Oh well, this is referring to. I was writing an article for the Bristol Cable about a development of 3 office blocks at Mayoral Port, and about basically there was a community group, Friends of Castle Park, who were were at the forefront of what the developer was saying was their community engagement, basically the piece was about the fact that this community group wasn't a bona fide community group. It had never had any meetings, no offices, AGM or anything, but it was just a Facebook group. And the person who'd set the Facebook group up had set themselves up as a representative of the group without any kind of democratic mandate, or voting on anything. And I was doing this piece and had contacted this guy, and then I was told by the editor that that a complaint had been made that I was harassing this person, and I asked who was that, and it turned out it was Councillor Nicola Beach, who's in Marvin Rees's cabinet. So it was that story basically. Okay. Who I was told had made this claim of harassment against me to a director of the Bristol Cable, who I think is the partner of Tom Renard, who's another Labour cabinet member. Oh, it's so insidious, isn't it? It's such a pity when we've got media who have got kind of financial interests in the city. There's also, of course, Bristol 24/7. It's got Marty Burgess as one of the who's a merchant venturer and one of the directors of the Lakota. So it's very difficult for Bristol 24/7 to be writing about. So what do you think generally, Geoff, about the state of our media? I mean, we are all quite fans of the Bristolian here, and even though they come out with extremely rude, I won't read this, a bent piece of lying bleep, which is one of the latest articles about Bristol City Council's new planning boss, Simone the Concrete Queen Wilding. So what do you make about the state of someone who's actually there at the sharp end in those meetings, deciding on what happens with all that, whatever it is, £350 million a year of our public money, probably more by now, maybe less, I'm not sure, as how the press reflects what's going on?
Well, so to me, not just because Joe sat next to me, but to me, the independent media probing and asking questions is absolutely essential. It's a key part of our democracy, to be honest. Perhaps it shouldn't be, because it shouldn't be necessary, but it is necessary, and it's right that questions are asked, and preferably that answers are given. Part of the frustration I have is that often councillors in cabinet and council officers don't understand that if they present things in a certain way or only provide certain bits of information, it creates a suspicion that something isn't right, and that we as councillors ask the questions and we're assured that everything's fine. I think there's almost something medieval about when there's a pronouncement by a public official, and they expect that it will be taken at face value. I mean, surely someone like you must be used to taking a bit of criticism on the chin, and that's surely what's necessary in that role. I'll be honest, there are times when the articles I have read in the Bristolian are a little hard hitting and close to the knuckle, I think it's fair to say. But to be honest, and I certainly in my days in the cabinet, I did get the odd mention. I think one of them might even have been complimentary, but
that's really shocking.
Absolutely. Well, all right. It wasn't offensive then. If it maybe
must have been a typo. Probably.
But actually, I think it's a really important role, and I think we need these things brought out. If we go back to the issue that happened a few years ago when the council started looking into the social media accounts of special needs parents who were objecting to the way it conducted its affairs. That was outrageous. The council actually called for an independent inquiry into it, and the mayor refused to allow it to happen. And we couldn't do any more to pursue it. But it's totally wrong that things like that are going on that are inappropriate or unacceptable. They have to be investigated, and the media, the independent media in particular, are tenacious enough to keep on persevering. And there will be councillors that will work with them and help them to know the areas to probe and ask more questions.
Well, at which point I must put out a little appeal, because we're trying to raise a little bit of money right now for this studio that we're sitting in, because the People's Republic of Stokes-Croft, there are threats to bump them up to a much higher business rate, even though it's actually not a business here. And so they're looking to try and get a little bit of income. So if anyone would like to just donate, maybe subscribe, even if it's just a £5 a month or something, to help the show carry on, you can do that on our show page at thisweek.org.uk. There's a little donate button where you can just do a little subscription. Or else, if you don't want to go through PayPal, you can just contact me directly via all sorts of ways on that show page and set up a little standing order. But obviously, it's only if you can afford to do so. But, this is where we are now. A lot of this mass media, the mainstream media that's got the resources to do these investigations, simply isn't doing it, because the people who are subject to those investigations seem to be able to swing it with the management, not necessarily the editors, but the management, to dissuade them. Thankfully, we do have these local democracy reporters, don't we, Geoff?
Yeah.
They do a pretty good job, and the commercial media would probably never do what Alex...
they do a fantastic job. But just to put it in perspective as well, and I'm not sure how long I've been coming in and joining you, Tony, and on this show from time to time, and there are occasions when I think some of your theories and comments don't necessarily fit in with my political take on things.
Well, you're much more polite than George Ferguson. He used to say, it's conspiracy Tony again.
But the fact is that if there are things that suggest there might be a conspiracy, we need people to ask the questions. Yeah. When I've been doing this in the City Council, I'm often told that it's down to ineptitude rather than conspiracy. And I must admit, the more I see of the City Council, the more I'm convinced that could well be the case. But the questions need to be asked. So my view is that I support people asking questions, even if I don't agree with their agenda, because it's important that if we're open and transparent, we've got to have the ability for people to ask questions and for them to be answered properly, so that one can get a clear handle on what's going on.
Well, I think that's absolutely appalling. You've given me such a pat on the back there, Geoff. Absolutely disgusting. Also, our final piece is going to be looking at tomorrow, because it's a big day tomorrow. I've never known, in all my years of journalism since, the late 1980s, of a march in London that's got so much pre-publicity. Ever since last weekend, we've had news stories on all channels talking about a massive march going on tomorrow in London in support of Gaza. Normally, these big marches don't get any pre-publicity, the idea being to sort of stop people. And in fact, whilst the march is going on, often there is a publicity blackout so that people don't decide to hop on the train and go and join a march, that sort of thing. But this one is completely different, and there's been a lot of talk about the far right turning up in London to potentially clash with the pro-Palestinian demonstrators.